Cheers, everybody. So, um, my name is Nick Aalerud, if you're first time seeing this, and this is actually a really special Zoom podcast recording. This is the official rebrand, not of the podcast, from the former Shut Up and Do It Real Estate Investing podcast right here. A lot of you guys have been following me in real estate for the last 20 years. And we've had our Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast for the last 4 or so. And for the last, I'll say 18 months, 24 months, I've been on my own journey. And this particular session, I wanted to kind of have as the official rebrand and relaunch so you can see the journey that I've been through. And maybe a couple of you might even resonate with where you are in your life. Real estate for me has been a really powerful tool and a powerful journey. It's taught me so much. And well, because I'm me, I wanted to tell the story appropriately with timelines. And so I have PowerPoint. I mean, why wouldn't I? I'm Nick. That's what I do, right? So bear with me while we go through this PowerPoint, and I want to share with you the story that some of you might resonate with, some of you might not. Either way, it's totally good. Nick, the real estate man, the Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast, I am rebranding to the Journey to Freedom podcast. And you'll see kind of what happened and why in the story if you haven't already heard it. So this is a story, my failures into fortunes, my burnout, and the journey to freedom and fulfillment. So hang tight with me a little bit as we just go through. So who am I, right? A lot of you know me, and if you don't, former investment banker with Mellon Bank in New York, been an active real estate investor in 7 different states since 2005, 600 fix and flip projects, blah, 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 owned a rental portfolio of over 1,000 units in 6 different states, and was even able to help write a story in a book, in a best-selling book, which I'll share with you here in a second. So my story, if you haven't already heard it in other podcasts with other people, but everyone starts somewhere, right? I was in the corporate grind at Mellon Bank in Boston and Everett, Massachusetts, and they had me working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And I saw an infomercial on TV. When that infomercial said, hey, if you're serious about letting go of your corporate grind, your W-2 job, we're going to show you how to buy real estate for pennies on the dollar. So as an investment, that was my first time ever investing in anything, and I can't believe there's an infomercial, right? But I paid $50 for that group, and that $50, they sent me a binder in the mail, and I learned some interesting things like real estate, inefficient market, right? Like real estate, you can leverage it and insure it, and oh, this is kind of neat. And it said, if you're serious about real estate, call this 800 number. Well, I guess I'm serious. I paid $50 for a binder, so call the 800 number, and the absolute best salesperson in the world talked me into my very first over-the-phone real estate coaching boot camp session, right? And I had to put together 3 credit cards to pay that $6,000. And they taught me essentially what real estate was, right? Which isn't even really a sticks and bricks business. It's a people business, but it starts with marketing. So that was a course in how to pull lists and how to reach out to sellers and that sort of thing. And this was all well and good, but that got me on an entire education overload train. Some of you might relate with that. Then they had the Learning Annex here in Boston in 2005, and I literally bought everything. I bought the Donald Trump University, the Apartment Riches Boot Camp. I bought Marshall Silver's hypnosis stuff. I went nuts, right? Invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in this education, put a lot on credit cards. And then I was mad at myself for the next 4 or 5 months because I didn't do anything with the information. I had all this stuff, I've been to these boot camps, and I was angry. And I found myself looking, as I was in the shower, looking at the shampoo bottle, and without even knowing it, my shampoo bottle became my accountability partner, right? So little by little, it's okay, a little bit less, a little bit. This is funny because now I'm bald, right? So you can see that I'm bald, but at the time I had lots of hair. I could even flip it. I can remember how. I remember saying okay, by the time that shampoo bottle hits 0, I have to buy a deal. I have to do something with all of this knowledge. And little by little, little by little, little by little. And then all of a sudden, there's a man who saw me posting on some online forums back in the day, long time ago, There was something called like reiclub.com, which I know has made a resurgence. And now I even know the owner of the new reiclub.com was doing an amazing job with it. But a guy saw me posting on some forums and said, hey, listen, you're trying to get into real estate. I have access. I'm in, he was in Minnesota and I was in Boston. He's like, I have access to undervalued real estate here in Minnesota. So we'll buy below market. I have access to these rent-to-own tenant buyers here in Minnesota that will pay above market rent, like 25, 30% above market rents because their credit might be damaged from some life circumstances. But then they want to buy the property. So at the end of 3 years, they're going to pay us 20% above what we pay for it now to get the deal. And this is, again, back in 2005, we would contract with one of these sellers for, let's say, $450,000. And then totally legally, you could finance these at 90 to 100% financing, right? And then totally legally, the seller at closing can give you a check back for like $40,000, $50,000 as like a thank you, like a closing cost credit, right? It was called a payment authorization. And it was all in the HUD. It was all totally legal. And you could finance these things 90 to 100% finance. So very, very little money out of pocket. So he's like, do you want to do a couple of these? We'll be 60-40 partnership. I can't sign on the loans, he said. He had some challenges. So I would be signing the loans and he would be the property manager and he was lining all the deals up and lining the tenants. I was like, sure. So you're saying I closed on one of these and at the at the closing table, I already get 40 to 50,000. Like we'd split that, but like I get that up front. Well, fuck it. I'm not going to buy one. Let's buy five in a week. Because I was like obsessed. Like you can make money in 3 different ways at the closing table for the rent, and it would cash flow for 3 years and on a resale. I'm like, yep, sign me up. So bought 5 of these properties, right? And then we had our call next Tuesday after we bought 5 in that week. And he took, his 40% of the upfront money. And then next week we were sitting down to figure out, okay, where were these tenants and let's just line them up. And he didn't show up to that call, like on a Tuesday. I'm like, that's weird. And they didn't show up to another call on Thursday. And then he stopped answering emails. And we're like, dude, what happened? Well, it turned out the 5 houses that I bought, this is coming later, the Shut Up and Do It, what became like my mantra, thus the old podcast name, right? And what happened was, so the houses were absolutely, so these are the houses. These are nice houses, right? So these were all different in Minnesota and Wisconsin. They're all contracted. They were up roughly like $400,000 to $600,000 each. And what I found out was that when he wasn't showing up to the calls, that the tenant applications that he had shown me were not real. And the leases were not real. And the resale purchase and sale agreements were not real. He had just made all that up. But what were real were the 10 mortgages that I had just signed. And it was an interesting start and foray into my real estate career because those 5 deals, my very first 5 deals in real estate, went horribly, horribly wrong, right? So I aligned with the wrong person. I also didn't, well, at the time, I had to put my head in the sand. I didn't realize it was me that had made the wrong decisions and didn't do enough due diligence, and I didn't know what I didn't know. But my first 5 deals went bad. 4 short sales and even 1 foreclosure that ended up starting out in real estate. So I restarted in real estate now with over $400,000 in debt because when you're doing short sales, I'm just signing. Like I became a motivated seller so fast when I had robocalls on my phone. I had to turn off my phone because every 38 seconds I would have a robo collections call for these mortgages. And I remember I just had so much trauma around my phone hearing that ringtone. And I had to shut it off and put it in a drawer, right? And I was just signing literally, like I had an investor that called me from Minnesota saying, hey, I know you're in trouble. Like, let us work these things called short sales with you. I didn't know what a short sale was. I just went with it, right? And thank God for this investor. He said, I'll get the collections calls to stop. And at the time, that's what I needed. So we did that and the short sales went through, but I was just signing anything, right? Anything to get these things out of my plate. And what I ended up signing was over $400,000 in judgments and 0% promissory notes and all that stuff that I still owed. So I lost all of my cash, all of my credit, and now I owed I'm $400,000 in the hole. That's how I restarted my real estate career, right? So here's my biggest lesson that I had learned that I then re-implemented over and over and over again in my career. right? So after about 6 months of putting my head in the sand, looking at everybody around me who was still at the bank, like they're all going out on Friday nights. Like they didn't have this happen to them. They were all making fun of me too. That was the worst part of this, right? Like my friends and family had all made fun of me anyway. Like, oh, you're going to go and be a big real estate mogul, right? Like that guy on the yacht on TV. And like, that's never going to work. And here I did, just went and proved them all right. Right. And I felt like a lot of shame around that. But here was the master program that I then started to adopt. I still knew that real estate was my way out. And once I realized that if I took responsibility for those losses and stopped blaming the other person, right? I had attorneys chasing him and property managers trying to rent these things out. I'm the only one responsible, right? And if I was the only one responsible, then I could now control my next steps. So here's kind of how I stepped back into the game, right? I didn't have any cash or credit to lose. So I had to choose a strategy and revamp all my systems to make it so that I could not lose any more money, right? Identified and started to set up systems. So the only strategy that would work with no cash or no credit was wholesale. So I had taken a wholesale course. So that wholesale course taught me that I had to invest in some marketing. So I used my phone and I had to pull it back out of that drawer. And I had all the excuses in the world as to why I didn't want to make those calls or go and knock on doors or reach out to sellers, right? With all this failure I'd already felt and all of this stuff, I was like, anything possible. Like, oh, I have to make sure that my lucky pen is out before I make my calls. And I have to make sure that the good script is out just so I know exactly what to say. Because God forbid I say the wrong thing, right? Oh, and let me look around. Okay, well, I need my water. I have to have my water. So let me go get that, right? Every single thing that I was doing was taking me away from the thing I know I needed to do that actually drove the needle, right? Which was make the calls or connect with sellers. And that's where ultimately this mantra came from. This shut up and do it became the mantra for me. It was to stop the excuses in my mind and in my brain, right? It was to stop all of that and just go, like shut up and do it. Shut up, stop the excuses, stop the noise, stop the distractions, and just go. And that became, I put it on pictures, I put it on stickers. We had it at all of our events and our workshops. Like it'd get one on my laptop. There was a big sign in our office, like in my house. That became my mantra. And so began the Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast. Back in, I think it was 2017 or 16 that we began that, maybe even earlier than that, 2015. But I want to share with you kind of where that came from. So that story I just shared with you about the Minnesota deals, I actually ended up being invited to be a co-author in this book called Don't Quit, Stories of Persistence, Courage, and Faith with an awful lot of celebrities. And it did become an Amazon bestseller, which is awesome. Forward by Mark Victor Hansen, the guy who wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. It was awesome. And proceeds from all that still just go right to charity. If you see it on Amazon, grab it. It's a good one. Here is the love in my life right now. These are my two boys. I'm a very proud single father of these two amazing men. And they're Cole and Mikey. And we like to go hiking. They like to go on YouTube and do video games. I like to try to force them outside into doing hard things. But that's a picture of us on top of one of our mountains. And I have an amazing, incredible wife right now. She has her two boys in her household, and I have my two boys in my household. Her name is Megan. She is and was my real estate attorney. And if you need one, if you're listening to this and you're still in the real estate game, she has 9 offices, Mass, New Hampshire, and Maine. Definitely make sure you check her out. She's been unbelievable. So, who am I really? The people in the Northeast have known me as the Reset King. And I'd like to rebrand that. But honestly, right, this is what I talk about. All of my talks were about learning lessons and challenges. And I've learned at a very early age, if I could go through something that seemed really hard for people, and at first I didn't want to share it because it's a failure, right? It has a different connotation. And people, when they hear that you failed, I thought that they wouldn't want to work with me. They wouldn't, oh, Nick has failed and therefore I can't do business with him. Whatever the stories were, right? The Reset King. So lots and lots and lots of things have happened in my journey, right? We'll talk about some syndication stuff. I was a big shot multifamily GP and LP investor, got involved with the wrong people, bent my own rules for buying properties, modular dealer. We had a business partner breakup. But we'll talk about finding purpose and enjoying the journey along the way. So today, I want to share the why and how it changed, the journey to financial freedom through scaling an 8-figure real estate business. Then we're going to talk about some hard lessons that I've learned just in the recent last 2 years, and then a call and an answer. So I like to, usually when I have other people here, I like to ask you, what's your why? If you're listening to this, there's a why that you have, the why that gets you up in the morning, the why that keeps you going, the why, which is why you're looking to ultimately, right, quit your W-2 job and move into self-employment or having freedom of time for you, right? It's a really big, big, big piece of this. So my first why was I wanted to travel the world, hit every single country, and enjoy the local cuisine and local beverages of every country in the world. And that was what kept me going. Like, all right, I'm going to not just, have this supplemental job and be self-employed to have the time freedom, but I need the money to do it too, right? And then, of course, I had kids. And a lot of that shifted and a lot of that changed for me into I want to be the best, absolute best example of a father to my kids. And if I get to enjoy the entire world and enjoy, grade A beverages, cocktails, and wine, along with the local cuisine, chef-prepared cuisine across every country, that's going to be a huge win for me. So I'd like to ask you what your why could be. What gets you up in the morning? So we're going to talk about my journey in real estate. Well, I was a wholesaler and rehabber. After that all happened to me in Minnesota, I reestablished myself as a wholesaler in the local Boston market, town specifically called Somerville, and just making calls and door knocking. And I met one person at a local real estate event, and he shared with me what he was buying. So I'm like, all right, I'll take the order. This is what he buys. This is how he buys. And I started just calling and door knocking specifically for him and making $5,000 a contract. That was my assignment fee in wholesaling. This is before I got licensed, before any of that stuff. And I learned so much. And when I underestimated the rehab, he allowed me to have his contractor come along with me on a couple door knocking and a couple inspections, just so I knew what construction costs would be. Because again, I came from the corporate world and I did not have a background in the trades. So it taught me so much. And around 9 months into the journey, it took me 3 months before I got my first big assignment deal, which was proof of concept. And then about 9 months in, I had enough money to do my down payment on my own rehab. That was in Somerville, same type of thing that he was buying. I thought I knew enough about it. I got a hard money lender that lent me the money to do it. And that rehab ended up netting me $0. But I didn't lose my shirt and I didn't lose all of my ego in the process. So for me, that was proof of concept. Like, I can do this, right? So that's where I became. So wholesaling and rehabbing, 2006 on. I also knew, as we go up, that we're going to talk about the REI ladder here in a second. I knew that was still an active income stream, right? And our job, after reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, I needed to turn my active income into passive income as much as possible. But if I couldn't do that by not being financeable, so you'll see in a minute, we found an out-of-state, we found a market out of state in Western Pennsylvania where we could be all in on a property and under like $30,000 and it would rent for $600. Then I got my real estate license, became a broker in 2010. Then I also started short sale mitigation with my amazing partner, Marianne Little, where we had a very, very successful run with a short sale company. We still have it open even now. And I also got involved with large multifamily syndications, which I bravely entitle My Brush with the SEC, getting involved with some in a different partnership. So after I did that, and I do a whole talk on that, this is not about that. I essentially was used as a witness in this piece of it. And do I even talk about this? Yeah, I don't know if I even talk about this later in the presentation, but 2010 was a really, really, really big year. That was the year that I was asked by a couple of the GPs locally to come and say, hey, listen, you're the one out there crushing real estate. You're in the big multifamily side now, right? Because now I was a big shot. I had got my whole wholesale business and rehab company completely systemized, and I was moving into the multifamily space. And why buy a 6-family when you can buy a 150 unit, right? That was what one of the gurus was teaching. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm in. And they saw me hustling. They saw me grinding and marketing for deals and doing due diligence. And they said, hey, listen, why don't you just come join us? Join us and help us raise capital, and we'll show you right? The asset management. We'll show you the operations. We'll show you how we structure these things. We already own 600 units. Like, let us show you. Let me come team up. So I was like, sure, that's a no-brainer. Let's go, right? And signing up with them, I was with them for about 3 weeks. Had put in, a bunch of my own money, 150K or so into their deal with my money, and then had raised another 250K in other capital. When one of them called and said, "Hey Nick, not a big deal, but the SEC just called. We're cooperating. We're giving them what they need, but they're going to call you next. So good luck." And I remember being in my mid-20s. Again, I had, 3 or 4 people in my real estate company that were still cranking on the wholesaling, rehabbing, but I was just pacing in the real estate office when these 3 attorneys started asking me all these questions. Where did you get this return information from? Where did you get this flyer from? Where did you, get the details from this project from? And I was answering all their questions as best I could. I finally, after 3 hours of being drilled by these attorneys, I said, "Do I need an attorney?" And then they answered, "Do you feel you need an attorney, Mr. Aalerud?" And ever since that moment, I was like, oh, I see. I'm in some deep shit here. So I lawyered up. And in that year, the entire year was essentially taken from me with subpoenas, and I had to print off every single email from every business venture I'd ever done. And I'd even opened up an edible arrangements that same year. And like I literally was just taking piles and piles and boxes and boxes and boxes of papers to the Boston office, and they flashed my phone and flashed my laptop, and they deposed me several times. And my attorneys didn't understand what my role in this case was until finally a year and a half later, they found out I was just a witness to give them information on these 3 individuals that ultimately were found to be commingling funds from one asset to another, right? And there was some evidence that one of them used investor funds to purchase a personal vehicle, and it became a big mess. But I was just a witness. But the damage had been done. It didn't matter, because 2010 was also the year I got married to my first wonderful wife, high school sweetheart. But what happens when you go through a year of complete stress like that, right? You just check out. You tune out. I was just so focused on just surviving, and I was not at all emotionally available. I was just trying to grind and push my way through it, which ultimately resulted in my very first divorce. She ended up, I wasn't giving her what she needed, so she needed to get that affection elsewhere. And my first marriage ended in divorce within 8 months of getting married. So I'm going to skip through this. My journey in real estate, back to fix and flip. And then we just started a third-party property management company, Peak Performance. Again, I wasn't financeable until about 2016 from the stuff that happened to me in 2005. So I finally got a little dangerous in 2016. Like, I know what I'm doing now. Let's start accumulating local rentals now that I can get bank financing, right? And we started that and going through a whole bunch of different property managers, and we had that whole big pot in Pennsylvania we started to buy in. And so we had all this property management experience out there from afar, like virtual real estate investing. Like, why don't we take what we have? We've already systemized it and put it into processes. Like, we're going to create our own third-party property management company. And so we did. In 2019, we opened that up, called Peak Performance Property Management. That was based in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Got a COO in 2019. We'll talk about what happened to me in 2019 going forward. And then we relaunched our coaching program in 2021 and continue to be involved in small JVs, small partnerships in commercial assets. So we still do like RV parks and boutique hotels and hospitality, and we have some self-storage stuff. But here's Nick. Here was Nick in 2019, right? It was so great to just say this to investors, right? Or say it to a banker. Like, this makes me look really good. Oh, we're a vertically integrated real estate investment operation, right? We've got everything you need. We've got everything. We've got the brokerage, licensed brokerage with about 30 or 35 agents in it. We have our home buyers division, the #1 home buyer in the greater Boston area. We are the #1 short sale mitigation and debt negotiation company. If sellers need that, we have that. Right? You need property management? We have a property management arm. We had our investment servicing arm. We have live meetups and networking groups, which is what REI Unleashed, right? It was the biggest one for a while under Black Diamond. We had a coaching and consulting group, and we even had our Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast. Vertically integrated organization. So it looked really, really good. And this is how it looked, right? In 2019, we were wholesaling and rehabbing in 7 different states. We did 189 deals that year. Our average net profit was $54,000. We were the biggest PPC buyer, that's pay-per-click buyer in the Northeast for leads. We had 43 agents in our brokerage, 24 employees on payroll. The monthly overhead, thinking about it even now, wow, $140,000 a month. And that included all of our marketing spend. I had over 1,000 units in different partnerships, and our annual revenue from all companies coming in was about $24 million, and net worth being around $35 million with all the ownership. Part of 4 big national masterminds, and was invited around the country as a national speaker to motivate, to share stories with, to go through those resets, to do all those things. Looked really, really, really good. And well, I'll go here. And I don't know who else has felt this. I didn't even know the weight that I was feeling in those moments, right? Like, this is now a weight that I felt after. You're going to hear the story in a second. But I was the producer. I was a leader of my organization. And I had to continue that face, right, to keep them motivated every single day. I had to produce income for my new family at this moment, being, recently remarried. I had to pay for a home that I built that I knew I needed to hold together. Now in 2019, I was remarried and separated in 2016. Therefore, I was, a separated family, trying to keep a family unit together for the last 3 years. And I was never in the right place. I was trying to start a new relationship, but splitting my time with my kids, the damaging relationship at home, family work. I had students and coaching clients, and I had to keep up a massive public image at these masterminds and in these events that I was speaking at. Responsible for over $10 million in debt, $2 million in investor capital, and holding it all together as publicly as I could. So it all came to a head. And this is a moment in 2019. I was part of one of the masterminds I was a part of was called the Collective Genius. It was like the top 1% of real estate investors in the country, right? You had to be invited to be a part of it. And we learned so much. It was a fantastic group. But here's who I learned about me. Nick's not just the Nick, right, that just goes to school. Nick had to be the guy that got straight A's. Nick had to be the guy that didn't just go into his college. He had to join the local student government and then become the student body treasurer and the student body president. Like, everything I had ever touched, I kind of had to take over or just win. And I didn't know why, right? So I was at Collective Genius. And Collective Genius, as a great way of doing it, they put groups of like 25 people in different rooms, and everyone gets to do a share. There's like a 15-minute presentation, 10 minutes of a share of what you want to share with the group, something that's been really beneficial to you, either in your business or in your life. And then there's a 5-minute ask, where you get to ask all these high-level people something, and they can make connections or do what they can. So Nick doesn't just join Collective Genius. Nick decides he has to win the belt, meaning that I had the best share of those 25 people. And Nick has gone like every quarter, and Nick's now won this belt. I'm setting up the stage for you 3 different times. So 3-time belt winner Nick now has this amazing new share for the 4th quarter. He's about to go, and I was sharing this whole thing, not just Miracle Morning, but like different habits and routines and how they served me and my teams throughout the entire day. Like what we did before breakfast, what we do for the lunchtime, what we do for accountability for before 4 o'clock, in our weekly wrap-up sessions, and kind of how we motivate. I had this whole routines and systems talk that I was ready to share. And I'm driving to the airport in Boston to go to Tampa. And I'll never forget, I got a call from a Boston number, and I answered it. And as I mentioned before, I was married in 2013, my second wife. And then we had our kids, and then we were separated 2016, but still living under the same roof. We were doing fine. So I thought. And I answered this call, and the call said, "Mr. Aalerud, this is so-and-so, I'm the attorney representing your wife. And I just wanted to get something, iterated. We're looking to find out when you're going to be moving out of the marital home. We're going to give you 7 days to do so, to pack your things and to relocate. but we can't promise you when you're going to see your kids again. But in the meantime, you do have to fund and pay for everything. So can you confirm that you can be out of the house in 7 days? And I remember like being on the way to the airport, and this isn't even a real conversation. I'm like, well, no, this is kind of coming. What I thought me and my wife were on good terms. Like, I don't understand where this is coming from. And they're like, well, let us know as soon as you can get out of the marital home, and please let me know like ASAP. And I hang up the call, and nothing hits me yet. Nothing hits me until I'm in the plane, and my brain starts to go, holy shit! Like I have to leave. I have to leave my whole life. And not only do I have to leave the marital home that I built, right? I bought it, I rehabbed it. It's exactly the kitchen I wanted. It's exactly the backyard. I've created everything the way I wanted it. I have all these memories there that I've planned and this family unit that I needed to hold together so desperately. And I'm, the owner of whatever it was, 25, 30 million in assets. And I'm going to be homeless. I can't even move into one of my rentals. Like, what? And I remember driving there, going to this mastermind and having this all hit me. And I'm supposed to give this talk to these top, 30 or 35 people in the top 1% of real estate investors across the country. And I get up there to do my talk on routines and habits and how they serve me and my team. And not one word comes out. And instead, this was me winning those belts those years ago, right? And as winning the belts, I get in front of this group and I just start to talk and I completely break and I melt into a pile and I just start crying. I literally start crying in front of these people because I have no words. And it was the first time my ego took a huge death because God forbid I cry in front of anybody. But I didn't know where else to go here. And I was about to give this whole presentation that was built on all these routines and systems and habits that weren't even real anymore because I wasn't going to have a home or my kids or like I didn't know what this was going to look like now. My life was literally falling apart in front of my eyes. And what did that mean? Right? Well, here's what 2019 did. So I was forced out of my home and the divorce was very, very, very tough. Essentially, I had been at 2016 being separated for 3 years. I was seeing somebody else and there was a lot of hurt and a lot of pain that was around that. And there was a lot of court battles and attempting to have me arrested and having to try to take the kids and all the bank accounts being watched and frozen and any time away was being used, like all of the stuff I had been doing for the family, right? Like my business trips and my going to do asset walkthroughs and going to these masterminds, and every single one of those things had been logged for the last 2 or 3 years and used against me. Well, he's a bad father because he's not present. He's not a fit for to be a father because he's always working. And it taught me tremendous amounts because all I wanted in that moment, in those moments, was to be with my kids and to have that impact on them. And it meant so much to me. And there's a beautiful story. What is one thing that you absolutely knew to be true that turned out to be false? It's a program I go through with my current students in our Life Unlimited community. Every one of us has one of those, right? There's something in our lives that we absolutely knew to be true that turned out to be false. And for me, I absolutely knew that no matter what, I had to hold that family unit together. I had to keep that together for the kids. And it wasn't until, this is before I was ordered to leave the marital home. It wasn't until one night when my then 2-year-old, I was putting him to bed and he just looked at me and said, it's okay, Dad. When you and Mom, are fighting downstairs, I just pretend that I'm asleep. I close my eyes and pretend that I'm asleep. And that's when I kind of realized that all of this holding it together for the family unit was causing way more damage than I ever thought, because kids pick up on absolutely everything. And what you do and what you don't do is all being silently recorded. You have an observer that is way more intuitive than you think. And then finally, in 2020, I was in the parking lot of my chiropractor when I all of a sudden lost feeling in my left arm. And then my brain starts to go immediately into saying, oh, wow, you lived up until this moment, huh? And all of a sudden this is it. You're going to die in a parking lot in your car. Like, really? All of that to get here? And then I lost feeling in my left leg. And I started to feel my heart completely just go completely crazy and erratic. And I couldn't breathe. And I literally felt as if you were on a weight bench at the gym and someone just dropped 1,000-pound plate on my chest. And I curled inward, and I remember shutting my eyes, and then I opened them again, and I was at the hospital. And thank God my chiropractor had come out at that moment, and Megan as well, who was there with me, and they had called the ambulance, and they came and brought me, and they ran all the tests. They ran all the EKGs and the MRIs and all the things as to what this could possibly be. And at the end of that moment, the end of like 4 or 5 hours of being in there and poked and prodded, they said to me, well, Mr. Aalerud, you look to be pretty healthy, except that, you know, cortisol levels were pretty darn high. So we're going to be diagnosing you as a panic attack. I said, panic attack? Those things aren't even real. Those are for people that don't have their minds right. Their mindset isn't right. They don't have their shut up and do it mentality. Like, that's not real. So all those things that I used to feel, realizing at that moment. And that's when they said, like, what set this off? Nothing set it off. Nothing. And it turned out that as my body and as your body keeps the score for every single little bit of stress that you put it through, and even if I was embracing stress, right? Shut up and do it became my mentality. And I even used to have the language that our success in this life is directly correlated to how well we learn to embrace the stress and the suck. Like, I used to say this to my students and my clients. And it's funny because your body remembers every single piece, even if your mind doesn't. Even if your mind has been trained to swallow the hard stuff, your body does not forget. And your body keeps the score. And it can only take so much stress until at one point it tips over that cup and it's just done with it. And that was the moment where I almost died. It literally felt like I was dying. And when my mind became active and said, oh my gosh, you're dying, it was then found, well, Nick, you did have some slight scarring on your heart, as if it was fresh. Not a full heart attack, but something definitely happened. You had an event. And that's when I realized that the mind is strong enough. And my mind in that moment, because I was thinking that I was going to die, it actually started to stop my heart and try to kill me. So in that moment, when I came out of that hospital, I knew I was physically a wreck because of all of the stress that had been going on the last few years with this divorce. And I literally had zero time to devote to my business. I literally pushed it all aside. And thank God I had a COO, a chief operating officer, that had taken over. And it's funny because being a control freak, I had refused to give him control over different aspects of our company moving forward. But the divorce helped because I was literally checked out, and it was fighting for survival, fighting for literally my life to get back on track. So with all of this stress, I said, okay, I know me. I need something. I need a target. I need something to shoot for to help me get back into the condition, physical condition of where I can feel good about myself. So I literally needed a peak, right? So I decided, with bad knees, bad hips, and this recent panic attack and potential scar in my heart, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go and climb the highest mountain, freestanding mountain in the world. I'm going to go and sign up for a year later to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And this is where things get interesting. As I'm preparing for this trip and I'm finally going up to this trip, there's just something off. And I don't know what it is. But I remember, like, going up to the top of the mountain and realizing as I'm on my way down the mountain, getting up to the top of the mountain, like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, 20,000 feet up. And it was an awesome accomplishment. But I'm now walking down thinking, I am so fucking unhappy. Like, now that this divorce thing is final and I'm back at work and trying to get back into production, and there's just something off, right? We're having the same page meetings, but I have I'm like, what is wrong? And it was coming down the mountain. I realized that I was in like 28 Zoom meetings and calls a week. I was running all of these asset management meetings, and running the same page meetings with the COO and running some team meetings and and having recruiting calls. And like, all of a sudden I had realized like I had created this massive, this was literally like one of my days, right? This is, they were all the same. I would literally wake up and be going from like 7:30 a.m. until about 6:37. And that was my day. I had created a prison for myself. I had gotten into real estate back in 2005 to let go of the corporate grind when I was working 60, 70-hour weeks. And I had traded that for working 80 and 90-hour weeks and literally probably not making any amounts of money that I needed to be because of all of my overhead and all the stress and everything that I had created for myself as this prison. So this is when I realized my problem. I had become addicted, completely addicted, and work had always been my escape. Nick was so good at real estate and business because Nick was afraid to look inward as to why he would overdo everything, why I wasn't a good father or a good leader, why I was, why I had to stay busy in order to feel like I had value. And this is where I started to really ask these questions. So I'm coming down this mountain and I realized that I was completely addicted to the deals, to the money, to the growing and the scaling, to any strategies that would help grow the profitability or grow the bottom line. I was addicted to control. I was addicted to being busy. I was addicted to being busy because I was addicted to being important. I was addicted to my ego. I needed to be the biggest and the best. I had to be the biggest company, right? The biggest employed, the biggest team, the number of deals, all the profitability. All of this was because I realized that my entire self-worth was wrapped up in me being important, in me being this identity, this real estate guy. So my definition of success was all wrapped up in how much money I was producing, what's coming in cash flow, and what's in my bank account. Because as a man, that's what we're taught. We're taught to produce and to support our family unit. And therefore, I was getting really good at that. I was really good at that until the family unit wasn't even a family unit anymore, right? My idea was of being a leader was just setting these big BHAGs, right? We hear about these big, hairy, audacious goals or these wild ass goals like WAGs, right? Like, okay, so we have those. We can set the big target and that'll keep everybody motivated, right? Let's achieve that goal. And Nick was very good at achieving goals at all costs. Costs to health, costs to family, zero self-care. And I used work. I was so good at using this as my sedation tool. I had been doing it for years and years and years without even knowing it. Something was going wrong in my relationships. I would just turn to work, open up my laptop and make a bunch of calls, right? Something was going wrong in my body. Oh, I can just put that on hold. Just open up my laptop, make a bunch of calls, right? And then I almost lost everything 4 times. And you already heard how few of those have already happened. So here's another piece and the last piece of this big burnout and the awakening that I had been going through. I got a call from my COO one night saying, hey, something happened at the office. I'm not really proud of it. But you're going to deal with some stuff and I'm going to drop my keys off early and take my paternity leave early. Right. And before that even happened, we're going to go 4 months before that happened. And we'll talk about this retreat. Meanwhile, I had seen another one of my colleagues from Collective Genius that was on Facebook, and he and I were the same, like on Facebook, right? Like crushing another, closing on 3 deals this day and 1,000 units here. We have more private money coming in, and yeah, we're doing busy. And all of a sudden, he posts on Facebook and he says, "I just want my week to be flowy. I want to make the same amount of money, but only have like 4 appointments a week, and just be able to do what I want when I want to do it." And I had messaged him, and I was like, "John, I want to be flowy. What the fuck? Like, how are you flowy? Tell me what prompted you to make this post." And he told me, he's like, "Oh, call this couple. They've been instrumental in my healing journey," whatever that meant. So I called this couple and they told me about a meditation retreat that was happening near me in that July. This is January, right before my Kilimanjaro trip. And so I signed up. They'll say, "If you trust John, just sign up." So I did. Now we get this call from my COO. And there'd always been something off. Every time I would have a meeting with him or same page meeting with him, something was off, something was off, something was off. I'm not proud of something that happened, he told me. So then as it turns out, he had had an altercation with my female staff in the office, and it triggered a lot of male trauma around a couple of them, and it triggered a mothering from one of them and trauma in the other, and it became a really big mess. And I had to work with them on lots of things all of a sudden that I'm finding that he had been managing in his management style over the last 5 years. Um, and we're talking a lot of like uh, inappropriate following into restrooms and following home at night. And turned out that this poor man, who had been, operating as my COO, had been actually living under a separate name out of my office for many, many years. And even then, I loved this man, and I tried and tried and tried to get him to just tell me the truth and tell me the truth, and found out that there were certain things happening that I didn't even know about. Like, I called when he was gone on his leave, and I would call our property manager on our team in Pennsylvania and say, okay, hey, listen, he's out, and I'm just taking over for him while he's out. And where are we? And I got notes like, oh, we fired him 6 months ago. We fired you guys as a client 6 months ago. We couldn't handle him and lies that he was telling us and this and that. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're saying that you haven't been managing our properties in 6 months out there? Well, not us. And all of those things started to roll into, oh my God, the weight of all of these things. And I had been giving up control for all this time. And again, not paying attention to so many things because of the divorce and because of my physical health and because of all these things. What happened? Well, I had signed up for this retreat that happened in New Jersey. And what I thought was a meditation retreat turned out to be a plant medicine retreat. And from a guy who barely, alcohol became one of my drugs of choice, but I had never even touched cannabis ever, to go into that retreat. And still, I started talking to people there. They were very high level entrepreneurs and high level executives. So I knew it was in the right room. But the things that I experienced that night, after having the faith and courage to take this plant medicine, and we're not talking psilocybin or ayahuasca or anything like that. These are like beautiful, delicate, different things. I had visions of 7 kingdoms melting into the ground. And I had a vision of a golden train being pulled from my ear. And I have no idea what any of these things mean, right? But as those things progressed, and then the weeks progressed into months, I absolutely started to realize that the weight was unbearable of all of these companies that I've been holding up for so long. The Nick that had vertically integrated and had these 7 companies. 7 companies, 7 kingdoms. I was being called to shut them down one by one by one. And I didn't even know that was my vision. I just started doing it because I couldn't hold it all up anymore. Not only could I not hold up the companies, I couldn't hold up the facade of who Nick used to be. Jim Carrey has become one of my big spiritual leaders, and he talks about depression is your mind telling you it's tired of being the character you're trying to play. And I had been playing the real estate leader, the guru, the important public speaker, all of these things for so long. And I was just done with it. And I needed to take a full time off. And I started asking myself questions. Well, God, who am I when I've let these people down? I had to lay off staff. Who am I when I'm not this person? Who am I when I'm not important? Do I have any value if my schedule isn't full? Right? So I started this whole journey to places I never thought I'd ever go, to healers and temples and shamans, and using things like plant medicine. Plant medicine has been a huge ally in me understanding who I am and the intrinsic value of who we all are as individuals. I've come to realize that we all share one overwhelming story of somewhere in our life we've figured, okay, we're not enough just as we are. We have to do, we have to achieve, we have to become. All of that is a story. And so I started to really dive into Who am I when there's nothing on the calendar? Who am I when I'm letting people down? And these are some great quotes, right? Sometimes you need to close your eyes to see. I learned that from one of my yoga teachers. I love that. And sometimes you have to stop all the noise in order to hear. So for me, I had to shut everything down. For those people who also are very active in their minds and not necessarily their hearts, because I didn't even know what the heart meant 3 years ago as I'm doing this talk. Here's a great one, right? The yogi says, be here now. And all the minds respond. Which way should we go? Where's that? How long will it take? How far away is it? How do we get there? I love that one. That's a good one because my mind still does that. All of our minds still do that. And here are the questions that I just mentioned. Who am I if I had nothing to achieve? Who am I without traveling around the country, speaking and being important? And what value do I have without any of what I had built? Or the validation that I was seeking from everyone else? So the identity shift, it was fucking hard. And through all the things I had been through over the last 14 months, right? All of the things to try to figure out and to heal deep inner traumas, it was all just me remembering who I am. And a lot of us, we are the compilation of paradigms and belief structures that we inherited from when we were 0 to when we were 7 years old, really. Because if you think about it, between 0 and 7, you have absolutely no understanding of what could be right and wrong, right? So it just goes right to our subconscious, right to our brains. And therefore, every decision that we make from childhood into teenagerhood into 20s and 30s and 40s, every decision we make is impacted by these beliefs and these programs that are just constantly running. Well, if I do things that way, I get love, right? If I don't do this thing, that's good. It makes this person feel better, and therefore I'm safe and secure and happy. So I want friends to be right. I want community. I want people to like me, and therefore I'm going to do this, and this. So I started to come around. Okay, what is this purpose? What's my purpose here in this life? And these are what I came up with, right? My purpose in this life. We all look for that purpose. Well, what if our purpose is just to be? So my purpose is to enjoy life and its treasures and its challenges, learning to come from a place of abundance and love, learning that the only two currencies that we take with us, money is not one of them. Money is just an energy source, and it comes and it goes, and we can attract it and we can repel it. But the biggest thing is we don't take the money with us. We take our love, our relationships, and our wisdom with us into the next life, regardless of what your beliefs are. I have seen and experienced things in these last 2 and 3 years where I know exactly that we're just a blip here on the screen. 86 years is just a blink of an eye. Our purpose, my purpose, is also expansion in all of its ways. Expansion with this awareness, expansion in the impact that I can provide for people, and playing an infinite game. The game so I can create and produce something that's really, really important that will outlast me in this lifetime. Leave a legacy for others. That's my purpose in this life. I also created a different program for me to find my purpose, right? It's called Soul Purpose. And I had another coach help me with this. They had us take an exercise where we would take 4 or 5 different personality tests, right? Like the Clifton and there's an astrology one and the Myers-Briggs. Like you take all these personality tests, and at the same time, you then reach out to your close friends and family and you ask them the question, like, if you had to have like 5 words that describe me, what would they be? And after taking all these personality tests, you compile all this data that's coming back, and then you take all these emails that are coming back and text messages from these people, and you boil it down to like the 5 words that you see over and over and over and over again. For me, these were those 5 words that I heard from the personality tests and I got from other people, right? I am a speaker. I am a visionary. I am a connector. I am a student. And I'm unapologetically authentic. So those became my 5 words. And then using those 5 words, I was then tasked to create a mission statement, which is how I would start to lead my life from that moment forward. And using those 5 words and those 5 rules, right? This became my mission statement. I am a beacon of light connecting those who wish to rise, so they have to be willing, to their path of freedom and expansion. And that became my new journey. So a vertically integrated company falls to the ground, and I find my real passion, my real purpose, which is to build a community of people that are all really focused on expanding their own awareness and then expanding their lives. And that's not just in finance, but in fitness, in their families, in their faith, but not faith in a religion or a God, but faith in themselves and having that deep purpose of waking up every single day. And then in their finances, to then finally expand. And why do we expand our finances? To have a deep impact and to have more fun, right? Money is just an energy source. And if it's just an energy source, we can attract it as much as we need to then use it for our freedom, and then use it to buy comfort and to buy more freedoms for ourselves and for our families and for our loved ones and for the people we care about. So here's a question for you if you're still here watching this. By the way, thanks for hanging out with me today. Starts with a definition. What does success look like for you? And what does freedom look like for you? This is a moment that I would absolutely have you take out your journal and spend about 15 minutes just thinking and writing down, what does freedom or success look like for you? If you could throw away the existing identity of who you think you are and really hone in on who it is that you would like to be. Here's one. Here's I know I'm being successful when, and just to read these pretty quickly, I can wake up and ask, what do I want to do today? I can wake up and ask and know my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. I can wake up, I can live anywhere in the world I choose. I work on projects that excite me and allow me to do my best work. I can disappear for several months with no effect on my income. I don't have any whiny or victimized people in my life. I wear my watch for curiosity only. I have no time obligations or deadlines except the ones I choose. I wear whatever I want all the time, and I can quit anytime. This is for the finance piece. I know I'm being successful in my personal life when I can get one look a week from people, and I don't get my validity from this, but something that I love to do now is in all the different ways through podcasting like this, or from a one-on-one coaching conversation, or from one of my Manifest Monday life calls. If I can see someone's lights go on behind their eyes, just one, right? To see that shift and like, oh, maybe that is possible. Or maybe that story that I've been saying isn't actually true. That's what really feeds my soul. And also as in the last 3 years, as I mentioned, because psychedelics have been such a really profound healer for me, I also offer some psychedelic facilitation. And that's another way that I can see that beautiful shift in people when they finally connect from their mind to their heart. They realize that their mind has been active for so many years in our society. It calls for the mind to just figure out problems over and over again. But all of a sudden we realize that we were born to have our heart lead the mind. The mind's a servant to the direction that we want to go. And all this sounds fucking crazy, by the way, to people who have not had this awakening. I get that. And I'm okay if you've already turned me off. This is fucking crazy. This guy's nuts. He's all woo-woo. And that's okay, too. I didn't believe in any of this shit 5 years ago. So how do we measure our success in life? You've already heard this is what we teach with our community, right? We have our faith, our fitness, our family, our finances, and our fun. Note that finances, when I said them out loud, come second to last, or last, because I am a walking example of why you need to take care of your faith in yourself, your higher self, your intuition. You have to take care of your family or your spouse or partner or your kids, and take care of your body and your fitness. If those three things are not handled, you can grind your way to a level of success in your business, but you will never, ever, ever keep the wealth that you are trying to create, because your business and finances will only grow to the extent that you do as an individual and as a spirit. And why do we even get finances to begin with? Well, we need to have fun. We're humans. It's the whole point. Here's some other things I found, right? Morning routines are a must, but we must go way, way, way deeper than just morning routines, right? Why are we doing the things that we're doing? And if we look and are intentional in our lives, living our life by design and not just by default and reacting to things that come up to us, what if we were to set an intention next week to be a better father, a better leader, a better spouse, a better person, right? To really, and to also focus, by the way, all the stuff that we have to do every single week, the one thing you're also missing is your own self-care. Because God forbid I even focused on that at all for years and years and years and years. That always would come last for me until I realized, right? The king has to eat first. We have to put that oxygen mask on first before we then share it with the people around us. So being intentional with our calendar and keeping score, having every Sunday spending at least 1 hour looking back at the week prior and looking forward to the week ahead. What was my word and theme for the week prior? Am I still on track for becoming what I want to become, right? A more intentional partner and a more grateful and loving father, right? And having a body that is capable of enjoying more and more experiences with the people that I love and my friends, right? Like all these things are my outcomes. Like, am I on track for these things? And if not, what's one thing that I can do in each of these F's to become better in that category next week? To reach my, if you want to get to the masculine, like we always tend to do, to reach my quarterly and then annual goals and the big BHAGs and the wild audacious goals, right? They're good to have a lighthouse, but also know that we completely change who we are every 7 years on a cellular level. So we completely change who we are biologically. Who's to say your BHAG and your wild audacious goal you might set in January for your December, and then six months through the year you're like, this is not serving me. I don't feel excited. I'm not following my passion, right? So here's a framework in our Life Unlimited community that we work with: awaken, attack, tract, and align. So in an awaken, how we do one thing is how we do everything. So we understand, right, that everything that we do and every decision that we make is influenced by just stuff that came in from 0 to 7 years old. Subconscious programming controls everything that we do. And once we're awakened and understand that that's what's happening, and this is where I ask that question. If you haven't already done this in your journal, you should do it now. What's one thing in your life you absolutely knew to be true that turned out to be false? And when you have that one thing, know that that's exactly the same for every single thing that you believe right now. Everything is true only until you can prove it false. And everything can be proven false, which means you get to create the life that you want to live by resetting the meaning and resetting these subconscious programs to whatever it is that you choose to live by. Once you're awakened to where they all come from to begin with. Pretty amazing. And then we go to attack. Okay, now that we know about these stories and subconscious programs, what's one action or decision that you're afraid to make? So what we usually start with is, if you find that story, right? A lot of those stories come back to, well, I am not enough unless, right? Okay, well, what's the opposite of that story? I'm not enough unless I produce I generate, $150,000 this year, which means I am doing things on a weekly basis. Okay, cool. So if I attack that story, then who am I if I make no money this year, right? And what's something I'm afraid to do? Why? So here's where we find a lot of these subconscious programs is what triggers you? What makes you enraged or scared or sad or upset, right? Like even just going as a traffic signal, right? Like, oh, red light again? Fuck. Why do these always happen? Well, number one, you're attracting that energy of all those red lights. And number two, it's really interesting to say, wow, I wonder if you didn't always rush to different appointments and you weren't always late for almost everything that you had, what would that feel like in your life to have a red light and have zero stress around it? Huh, a red light. Wow. Well, good thing I have plenty of time. That gives me a chance to just reset these podcast episodes in my car. Cool. Right. So where does the story come from? These are the attacking thing. And is that story, we always go here. So is that story that we've identified, is it completely and 100% true? The answer is no. It's never completely and 100% true because you've already identified that one story you thought to be true that turned out to be false. So if that's the case, what's the opposite version of the story? What if you are enough without achieving anything? And where's that evidence? Because there is evidence to support any story that you want to come up with. And then you get to choose. If the opposite story doesn't sound good to you either, you get to just make up the story that makes sense. I am enough when I am practicing my own self-love and I am expanding on my own accord, right? You can make up whatever story you want. Here's a couple stories in money, and we just come up with some of these, right? Because a lot of people have a lot of stuff with scarcity. Money is finite. So, okay, we're making money, we're taking it from somebody else, right? These are all myths. Money is just an energy source. It's greedy to make more money than you need. Some of these stories we heard from our parents growing up, right? Money doesn't grow on trees. And some people like, we must earn it. We have to work hard for our money. That comes up a lot in my coaching calls, right? If I don't work hard, then I didn't deserve it. And if I make more, here's a big one. What if we self-sabotage ourselves because we know if we made more money, our friends and family would think differently of us, reject us, or call us greedy, or call us out on all that, right? And we'd have to maybe change our social circles. So I'm going to quick on this one. This is an infinite energy source. And time is, we used to be trained, right? Time is money. Time is money. Time is money. No, our time here on this planet is our most valuable resource, more than anything else. And you can absolutely learn to have everything, the money and the business included, once you start to turn inward and really, really focus on what's important. So we have this other framework. I'm going to skip through this now. This is when we go into the finance F really, really hard, and we start to talk about like taking your active income and moving that into a passive income as you go up what we call the active to passive ladder. And those of you who know me know that I've used real estate as my tool for wealth creation for very, very long time. So we still do have programs that are teaching people how to make money in real estate and active income, like wholesaling, rehabbing, and agency, but then how to convert that into passive income as quickly as they can, to then really having super incredible life experiences, and you can experience magic so then you can give magic out to people. And I'm just going to briefly touch on this slide too, because this talks about our relationship with money as we go up this ladder, right? This is that active to passive ladder. So at the bottom, money is survival. How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to get groceries this week? Right? And we're working our W-2 job, or we're struggling in whatever we're doing because we're chasing the money down, right? We're chasing paycheck to paycheck. How do I do this? And once we get survival down, we then move up the ladder, right? Now money is kind of a weapon, right? It's just a different energy source. So we're talking real estate specifically here, right? So all of a sudden you go from like the active business of deal flow or wholesaling or rehabbing an agency. Now you're looking at like, oh, well, I can be involved in these projects and learn how to create value, right? By doing value adds or performing rehab functions or working with contractors and forced equity, right? Now we're moving up into accumulating cash flowing properties or more passive. So money is a tool. We get to shoot a cannonball of cash out and as an investment, and we try to get little bullets that come back to us, right? That's usually rentals, or as you kind of move up, like whether it's a rental or you're an LP in deals. And finally at the top, which is really interesting. And I've been at the top of this ladder and I've been at the bottom of this ladder, and I've gone up and down in the middle of this ladder several times. When you get to the top, it's interesting because your whole dynamic and relationship with money completely shifts and changes. You realize that money is not even real. Like you get to the top and you have money, and people just want to partner with you, and you're a key principal, and you're lending it, and it comes back, and you have good deals and you have bad deals. Holy shit, but you realize you just attract it anyway. It's not even real. And if we can just take on that money is energy, if we take that on from survival mode and start to think of it as money is energy, it will be attracted to us, right? I take control of everything in my life and all my results to this day. And money is absolutely everywhere. Money is an abundant energy source, and it comes and it goes freely. I attract it all day long, and I don't entrap it. It just comes and it goes, and it comes and it goes, because you need energy to continuously flow. All of a sudden, you start to get better deals. You start to attract better partners. You start to attract a lot more private money. You start to attract all of this stuff. This is the attraction versus the grind, right? The allowing over the force. The Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast stood for force and the grind, and we elevated that. And that's why we're changing the entire podcast to the Journey to Freedom for that very reason. So here's going deeper, that last part, right? The attract. If you can envision a life without any triggers, trauma, or limiting beliefs, like if you could just create a whole new life for yourself right now, what would that look like for you? One of the things we have students do, right, our community members, is to go ahead 3 years into their life and imagine like the perfect day of work, but really dive into that emotion and that feeling. Like, where are you living? You get up out of bed and you put your feet on the floor. What does that floor feel like? What's the smells that come to you? What do you see outside your balcony that's like right outside your master bedroom? Do you live on the water? Do you live in a warm climate? Where are you? And once you have that really clear vision as to who and where and what you want to live, right? We get to ask ourselves these questions. Well, what would it look like if it were easy, fun, and flowy? And we can laugh, right? Like, what could it look like for us instead of having to grind and force it, right? What if it were easy, fun, and flowy? And finally, aligned. You know you're aligned when you can find yourself. So alignment is not achieving the target and the BHAG that you've set for yourself. Alignment is becoming the person that can get to that target, is becoming the person that can get to that envisioning that you've done, right? Who's the person you have to become in the meantime? What lessons do you have to learn? What things do you have to go through, right? Follow that which brings you the most excitement and drop any attachment to the outcome. That's all alignment is. When you can wake up every morning and you ask yourself these 3 questions. Do I have them in here? I don't. These 3 questions you ask yourself, you know you're in alignment. Number 1, how do I show up for myself in the best way possible today? So in other words, what can I do for my self-care and self-love today that really shows up for me? Because, by the way, that raises your vibration and starts to attract very different things, and you start with gratitude. Number 2, who else do I want to show up for today? Who else can I really show up for in a deep, meaningful way? Sending them a beautiful text message, or writing them a letter, writing them an email, just appreciating them. Or maybe you're setting time to really devote towards that vacation with your kids or that date night with your partner. What does that look like? And knowing that you're not broken, knowing that all of the mistakes and everything that you've gone through up until this very moment, watching this here today, right now, has led you in a very perfect way to being able to create the life that you demand and deserve from this life. You're whole and perfect just as you are. So here's some further questions. Like, what if you already had everything you needed? You already knew everything you needed to learn. You are ready for anything that you want to be ready for, or that you've been putting off or procrastinating. What if doing the opposite of the thing you, quote unquote, brain says you should do is the one that gives you the best results? AKA Brandon Turner has a fantastic one that he shares, right? Like, he absolutely must go to his weekly massage appointment because that's where he gets all of his biggest downloads and ideas and all that comes to him. Oh, but I can't do that. It costs money. Oh, but I can't do that. I'm not I'm taking time away from my team or my family. Like, what if? What if doing the opposite of the things you think you should do is would give you the biggest results? You feel like walking on the beach that day. What if walking on the beach that day and you finally give into your higher self and intuition that says, I need to go to the beach today. And you go there and you're walking along the beach and all of a sudden someone says like, wow, it's so cool to see you here. Like, I love your energy. Like, where are you coming from on this? This sounds crazy too, but this is the shit that happens to me now in a whole different vibration. And that person ends up being a new person who has a 12-unit building in downtown, Salem, Massachusetts, that is looking for a solution in order to help, a creative solution to help retire, keep their monthly income, but wants to sell their property. So by the way, that like would be a 100% seller finance real estate deal, which creates cash flow for me, solves a problem for them. But this is the stuff because I'm attracting it. And flow versus grind, we talked about this. You can grind your way to 10 million in revenue, but it takes a different person to keep it. It takes a different person to go to that next level, right? And you can just be reactive and checklist items like got married, started the business, bought the house, got the dog, right? You can do all that. Meditated, journaled, did that today. Check, 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 check. Did my workout. I had my supplements. But what if instead of the checklist, you could be super, super intentional with every thought, every decision, and every action that you did on a day-to-day basis? And here are the 3 questions again, for those of you who didn't see them. How can I show up better for me today? What do I want to do today that leads me towards the most excitement? And who do I choose to show up for today? That's when you know you're in alignment. And every single thought that you have, right? Words have become so unbelievably powerful for me because when you say it, you speak a thought into existence. So what you say becomes real, becomes things. Thoughts become things. If you see it in your mind, you will hold it in your hand, by Bob Proctor. So be very careful with what you're thinking. And also know that you have 80,000 thoughts in a day. And every single day, your mind will go down the exact same neural pathway. 72,000 of them are exactly the same as the day before, right? So your mind is only there to keep you safe. Your mind is only there to keep what is known to you, which is who you were yesterday, to become and be the same person today that you were yesterday. So embracing discomfort and become free. What can you do? What crazy thing can you do to throw your brain off? Right? What crazy thing can you do today? Like, what if you just brush your teeth with your left hand or your other hand, right? Like, no, not today, brain. We're going to do something different today. I'm going to throw you off. I'm going to take a cold shower and really shock your system, right? I am going to go and take care and do self-care, even though like the guilt and shame feelings that aren't even real. By the way, those are the only 2 emotions that are learned emotions. We are not born with guilt and shame. They are learned emotions. So we pick those up in childhood too. What if instead of doing what I feel that is best, like, grinding away today, what if I did go to that sauna and I did go to the gym and really worked on myself because I feel like I needed to? What crazy thing can you do today that will change who you are because you've changed the neural pathways in your brain? So this is me now. I work on attracting deals, attracting partners, attracting capital. I don't chase them anymore whatsoever. I feel so much more fulfilled every single day. I wake up and I can ask myself those 3 questions. And by just answering those 3 questions and journaling them and then proceeding and executing on them, right? I'm leading such a deeply more impactful life by sharing this story with as many people as who will hear it. And if you're at the beginning of your awakening journey, I can be the first to tell you congratulations and condolences, because once you see the things that I have seen, you can't ever go back. And now you're in a beautiful healing journey of self-love and self-discovery that will lead you to living the most deeply impactful and fulfilling life that you never even thought was possible. But it's all possible. It's completely life unlimited. Thank you all for listening. This is why we're changing the brand of the podcast from the Shut Up and Do It Real Estate podcast to the Journey to Freedom podcast. And if you want to connect with me, I'd love to have you. Facebook, I'm at my friends limit, but Instagram's always there. Post a lot of reels there. So definitely have me on Instagram. We have an amazing, amazing Facebook community that formerly was called REI Unleashed. It is now called REI Life Unlimited for people interested in all of the life aspects, with just a little bit of real estate thrown in for wealth creation and cash flow, and the way and the tools that we use for financial freedom, right, are in there for real estate as well. So we have two communities. We have REI Accelerated, which is really focused specifically on real estate itself. Complete deal flow system is there. My trademarked system that really shows people how to create an active deal flow business, and off-market deals come to you consistently, and that's how people generate cash as an active income stream using wholesaling or rehabbing or rentals. So we have all that course in there, but you all know what I'm passionate about now, and it's seeing the light in someone's eyes when they finally see something else that's possible for them. Would love to chat with anybody who'd like to. You can go to that website, bookwithnick.com, for just like a 20-minute conversation, or just shoot me a message on Instagram, and we'll make something happen that way. But stay tuned for more episodes of the Journey to Freedom podcast. We already have a backlog of guest speakers that have already recorded, and there's some crazy, crazy shit and wonderful lessons and takeaways coming to you. So thank you all, guys, for being here with me today, guys and gals. And I'll see you in the next episode. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Talk to you soon.